So effectively, we are 36 years old. Originally started in PR, so this was all about helping clients get their message across in various media. 1984, my boss, who's still the chief exec of the business 25 years after he became chief exec, joined as employee number 6. And really, we were so successful in terms of winning technology clients that he moved to Seattle, where he effectively helped Bill Gates really sort of design Microsoft's sort of marketing strategy. And then as Microsoft developed into a sort of global business, we then opened offices around the world. We then started winning other clients like IBM, Hewlett-Packard, etc., created a conflict brand, Byte. He then moved to San Francisco, where he's here today, and actually hence why I'm here. We listed on AIM in 2005, so we've been a listed company for quite a while. And effectively, I suppose the sort of seismic moment for us was in about 2010, when my boss, who is based in sort of San Francisco, lives and breathes the whole Silicon Valley sort of VC community. It was so obvious that we were going through this sort of digital sort of transformation. So effectively, we moved very much from helping clients in terms of writing press releases so that other media would pick up their stories to becoming a digital communications company, where effectively, we disintermediate a lot of those sort of media. So now we have a situation where the business is totally digital first. We spend all our time helping fast growth companies in terms of getting their messages across directly to consumers rather than actually through other media. So today we're now in 14 countries. Market cap's about 280 million, and we are growing very fast. Brief in terms of the management team. Our chairman, Richard Eyre, he used to run ITV, he used to run Capital Radio. He currently runs or chairs something called the Internet Advertising Bureau, so he totally gets the digital space. Tim, as I said, has been around for 34 years, chief exec for 25, which is pretty unusual in the space. And I joined about 3.5 years ago, having been at Capital Radio and various other sort of media companies. In terms of our philosophy, I think our philosophy is all about sort of people using technology now to drive marketing messages. I think the days when you could take people out for lunch, hopefully persuade them to write a nice story about you, which would then appear in the sort of Wall Street Journal, those are sort of completely gone. It's all about technology. It's all about how you can use technology to access consumers faster when they want to be accessed in terms of your messaging. And I think what differentiates us from a lot of competition, and there's a lot of people in our space, from the big guys, WPP, down to small guys in the shed, is that we absolutely embrace technology. And whenever, as a management team, we get together, which is very often, we're always asking ourselves, are we using technology fast enough in our business to really quicken what we do? In terms of what we do, we try and sort of put our business into sort of 3 basic buckets. The first, sort of using our sort of core skills of creating content, which has always been the sort of core of what we do. But now, instead of writing press releases, we are writing apps. We are, using all the sort of social media in terms of getting a message across. And that means that, companies, for instance, if you want to know anything about any company, the first thing you do, put them in Google, and up comes their homepage. Now, increasingly, what we're doing is actually helping companies design their homepages, and because we all know that a company's brand is the consumer's online experience. So it's all about, when you put something to Google, you get the homepage. Can you get where you want to very quickly? And so a lot of our business now is about helping companies in terms of navigate that sort of digital transformation. The signature brand we have is Facebook, where we actually were Facebook's launch agency probably about 10 years ago. We're still the agency of record. Every time Mark Zuckerberg does something, we are sort of at his beck and call. And bizarrely, actually, it's one of our more traditional relationships where, Mark absolutely loves getting his messages into the Wall Street Journal. But increasingly now, we're broadening the relationship. And one of the things Facebook did recently was launch the virtual reality headset, which actually was probably launched about 12 months ago now, thinking about it. And we were the launch agency, so we basically project managed the whole thing. We created all sorts of interesting events, digital content, and it was hugely successful. So that, Facebook is now a $7 million fee income client for us, and has been growing consistently over the last 5 years. The other thing we're increasing investing is data companies. The company we have here is Morar, which we acquired when it was only 5 people 2 years ago. It's now 80 people. And that's all about helping clients using data to make informed decisions. So with Burberry, we do a lot of brand tracking. You're probably familiar with YouGov in terms of, they have a lot of brand tracking surveys. We're in a very small way trying to be a sort of the new YouGov. It's a small business for us at the moment. It's now 9 million fee income. It was about 1 million when we acquired it 2 years ago. But, it's picking up interesting clients, like Burberry. And, we think that data is absolutely going to be the heart of our business going forward. Finally, in terms of technology, again, quite a broad spread of things we do here, but probably, again, our signature client is Google, where we won them 3-4 years ago, where we did a little bit of research on YouTube. We then were asked to look into help Google in terms of what to do with their retail offering online. And so we decided to effectively create an online store for them. We then have a huge amount of training materials, and it's now become a £15 million relationship. It's our biggest client. It's a great challenge to have Google as a client because they are moving at warp speed. But effectively, we have to keep up with Google, and that's part of our interesting challenge is you've actually got to think like that, where every day you've got to come up with some different ideas. So I think, if you look at what differentiates us compared to our competition, we are very focused on working with high growth companies and super delivering for them. The other sort of interesting thing about our business is that we have a very entrepreneurial culture where we have a very lean head office, where there's probably only about 20 people at head office, and we're more of a sort of portfolio investor in businesses. So we have here 17 businesses listed in those 3 buckets of technology, data, and content. And I guess our sort of core skill is identifying talent who have a ambitious business plan, but for all sorts of reasons have probably run out of road, whether it's the limit of their financial ability to grow the business, or maybe they're a UK business who wants to go into the US and slightly sort of put off by the litany of companies UK companies who tried to go in the US, and we can really help these businesses grow. So we're a very entrepreneurial business. We love helping entrepreneurs develop their ambitions and actually make them very wealthy because we have a very high reward company or sort of culture for good success. In terms of what makes us successful, I think in embedding technology, 10 years ago, all we had was people who were very good at taking people out for lunch. That was our sort of core skill, was actually taking people out for lunch. Now we have 200 software engineers. The biggest challenge we have is talent, because if you're trying to, the business actually with Google doubled its size last year. And so we suddenly, in 3 months, we had to find 50 software engineers in San Francisco, which is not the easiest thing because you're competing with Google, Apple, Facebook for talent. So, but I think, we do recognize that, we have to use technology and we have to hire the best talent. I think the next slide, or maybe 2 slides on, I talk about our clients, and actually they are generally high growth companies, not in every case, but we do love working with high growth companies because if your biggest client is Google and they're growing their top line at 30%, it's quite hard not to grow fast if you're delivering to them. We very much focus on the UK, US. US we view as the gateway to the world, UK hopefully still the gateway to Europe. And we're not seeing, thankfully, in fact, we're seeing Brexit as an advantage in terms of the UK is now a low-cost centre rather than quite a high-cost centre previously. We're quite acquisitive, and that's all about spotting talent who we think have real ambitions to grow and the talent to sort of fulfil that. And we are highly focused on having simple incentive plans. So if someone can take the business from here to here, they know that they're going to get quite a nice reward for that. And I think we do have. I suppose what goes through the organisation is that we have people who are very ambitious, very focused, and genuinely want to make some money for themselves for doing a good job. This is a sort of a client list to die for a company of our size, and I think as you probably gather, these aren't just we did a bit of work for Facebook 3 years ago. We are Facebook's agency of record, Alphabet, Google. We do a huge amount of work coding directly onto their main website. IBM, we've been a client of they've been a client of ours for sort of 20 years. So, and if you actually put up this list 3 years ago, it'd be pretty similar. I mean, I think there's a few joined. Unilever joined because we've done an acquisition which brought Unilever in, but 15 of these top 20 customers would have been customers there 3 years ago. So these aren't just sort of one-off relationships. They are long-term sort of partner relationships. In terms of where we're trying to get to, 5 years ago, all we did was create content, and increasingly that content was being in digital formats, but we were still very much a content company. Now we're investing in technology, and we actually have created a little fund where we're investing in interesting technology like something called Vrge, which helps companies with their email marketing, uses AI technology so that if you want to improve your click-through rates and making your emails more impactful, you use this technology, which uses machine learning to reorder the headline so that you're more likely to use it. eBay is the biggest client there, and actually that business is growing very fast. So, you know, we do think technology is going to be increasingly differentiator, and also data. I mean, everyone is awash with data, and actually having companies which both can generate data, but also then use data to help turning that data into actionable insight is a key thing of what we're trying to do as well. And the reason we think our revenue is going to come more from tech and data is because that's how our clients are spending money. Every company is now becoming a technology company, and if they're not, they may not be in business in 5 years' time. I mean, Snapchat wasn't here 6 years ago, you know, and that's the astonishing thing, where you've got a company now worth 30 billion, which wasn't here six years ago. This is our sort of 5-year growth record. You know, we've had strong revenue growth, increasingly focused on profitable companies. I think we were guilty a couple of years ago of chasing customers rather than profitable companies and sort of profitable customers. So increasingly, we're now trying to make sure, you know, without stifling that entrepreneurial creativity, which is part of our DNA, you know, people do focus on the bottom line. Google wasn't a client 3 years ago. It's now 10% of our revenue, and hopefully will continue to grow. And, you know, we actually are growing quite fast in our sort of headcount. I mean, again, you know, we want to make sure that we manage that, but, you know, we've definitely got strong ambitions. It's a slightly kind of strange time because our year ends January, and so we're in a sort of technical close period, but we released a trading statement at the end of January which said that we're very much in line with expectations, so I can do a little bit of steering here in terms of what the expectations are. But these were our sort of figures for the 6 months to July 2016, which showed that revenue was up 30% on the previous period. That 30% is roughly about 12% organic, 8% through acquisitions, and 10% currency, because we report in sterling, and a big chunk of our revenue comes out of the US. So obviously, you know, with the fairly dramatic devaluation post-Brexit, we're actually seeing, you know, quite a healthy uptick there. Quite a focus on margins. I mean, I was here, I started just over 3 years ago, and everyone told me, you know, you'll never get the margins up to 10%. And I think this year our operating margins to be around 15%. And Martin Sorrell, who, as you know, runs the sort of biggest business in our space, his margins are over 17%. So we think there's quite a lot of growth to come in terms of driving the top line, but also, you know, having operational efficiencies. We're fairly allergic to debt. I think an awful lot of companies in our space have got into trouble because they've expanded too fast. They haven't, you know, they've been totally focused on profit rather than managing the balance sheet. So we do like to manage that in terms of making sure that we keep our debt in check. And I guess the rule of thumb I have is that, you know, if we ever look like we're getting more than sort of 1 times debt to EBITDA, then that's where I start getting a bit nervous, and I don't like getting nervous. So I'm very keen to keep the debt under control. In terms of regional breakdown, again, we're unusual in that we're UK listed, but 65% of our revenue comes out of the US. These are for the 6 months, so you sort of double it and add a bit to get to our sort of 4-year numbers. We're seeing very solid 20% margin in the US. And the real sort of recovery for us over the last 3-4 years has been in the UK, where partly because I think my boss was based in the US and he was very focused on terms of our US performance. UK was a little bit sort of forgotten, which again is slightly unusual for a UK listed company. Part of my mission on joining was to really sort of fly the flag for the UK, and we've seen fantastic improvement in maybe not so much the organic revenue growth, because that takes a bit of time, but in terms of improving the margin. And in terms of the full year and looking forward to next year, my ambition is to get the UK margin up to that 20%, which is a sort of comparable level to the US. We have reasonably small businesses in APAC, and we're actually 6 countries in APAC, and that's sort of Australia, China. We've got a tiny business. I mean, China's a nightmare market to be in, but we have to be there for some of our global clients. We're in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia, and India. And actually, India's going gangbusters, and slight hiccup with the sort of whatever it was, the currency thing where suddenly he took all the money away. But we've actually sort of worked our way through that. So we're actually seeing good growth in revenue and margins in APAC, and then we're at 6 countries in Europe, which actually is doing much, much better than we ever thought. I mean, I think Europe was always seen as a bit of a tough market. Anyone doing business in France will realise how tough it is. And actually, we're really seeing some good growth now there. And I think the economic figures which have come out recently, I think we seem to support that. So I think in terms of our priorities, I think we have a business which has got the most fantastic customer base, and we are convinced that we can continue to grow organic growth of at least 10% out of those US customers. If your main customers are Google, Facebook, Amazon, Airbnb, they are really, really wanting to sort of change the world, and therefore they need people like us to help get their message across. They're fantastic in terms of products. We're great in terms of helping them get their message across. UK, we've done reasonable amount of acquisitions, and that's now becoming a 40-50 million revenue business, which is still tiny in the context of WPP, but we are focusing on a number of niches where we think we can sort of win. There's no point competing directly against WPP because we'll get sort of squashed. So what we're doing is identifying and then targeting various niches where often we sort of go under the radar. And we keep on winning new clients. I mean, yesterday I got a nice email saying that we just won LinkedIn as a client, which is going to be $1 million business for us this year. So, we do seem to have got some good momentum in our business. Brexit, I mean, I think everyone's a bit bored of this now, but we're effectively seeing, with 85% of our revenues and profits coming out of markets other than the UK, it's a great place to be. In fact, this year our profit will probably be 3 million more than I budgeted at the beginning of the year because of currency devaluations. Now, clearly that could go the other way, but it does appear as it's sort of 125 to the dollar seems to be where we're headed. So, we'll continue to monitor it. We do small bit of hedging, but I think, to some extent people buy us for what we do, not because of our ability to read the currency markets. So in conclusion, I mean, this could be my slide I present to the city on the 4th of April when we have our full year results. Obviously, slightly doubled numbers. So, it looks like our revenue should be up 30%, very strong organic growth, good profit growth, good margin growth, dividends. People tend not to buy us for our dividends, but, 20% increase or 25% increase in dividend for the full year, not to be sniffed at. And we're very careful in terms of monitoring our debts because, these businesses can be a bit fragile if you don't monitor your debt, and the last thing you want to do is end up running the business for the bank rather than for the shareholders. So there you go. I've been quick. I've done it too quickly.
Okay. Do you have any questions, please? Gentleman here.
I thought I stunned you into silence.
Companies that employ a lot of human talent often pay a lot of the added value to the human talent. So could you tell me what percentage of your revenues go in employment costs?
Yeah, we try and 65% is the norm. We have a situation where for each of the operating companies, we try and get the direct costs, sort of direct sales costs at 55%. Then they have some sort of back office costs, sort of finance, etc., which is probably another 5%. And then we have some group head office costs, including PLC costs of another 5%. So about 65%. And that, I mean, if you start with £100 of revenue, 65 goes in staff costs, that's 35%. And then we have sort of property, our own marketing and other stuff, which probably gets down to, say, 15% margin we are now. So I mean, it is the biggest cost. And I mean, talent, without doubt, is our biggest sort of cost.
Is there a bonus element?
Yeah, we actually have a number of bonuses. I mean, I've actually just signed off this year's bonuses, and in total it's about £6 million for 170 million revenue. So, there's that, 3-4% element. We then have a lot of the reward goes out in sort of stock options, because again, which are often very tailored to the individual performance. So we have annual bonuses, which is roughly 4%, and then we have performance-related sort of shares in their own company, which can be flipped into shares in the parent company. So yeah, we do have a very highly incentivized structure.
And just a quick question on the talent and where your employees are based. Are they mostly UK, or are they mostly US, following where your revenues come from?
Yeah, we have about 600 people in the US, so it's 300 in San Francisco, 300, probably about 280 in New York, and about 20 in Washington, because we have a couple of sort of lobbying businesses in Washington. We have about 300 UK, about 100 in continental Europe, and about 500 in APAC, but that's slightly distorted by India, where we have, it's a very fledgling business, and I think, you almost the cost of doing business is having, to hire a lot of people. So, yeah, the revenue definitely follows. Sorry, the staffing definitely follows the revenue, and in the US it's roughly $200,000 revenue per person. UK it's probably the same, but in pounds rather than. So it's probably near £120,000 per person, and APAC it's probably near £50,000. So there are different dynamics, but absolutely we put the talent where the clients are.
Gentleman here, please.
Is there much synergy between the different operating companies, or are they just a collection of companies? Do they share clients, meet different needs?
The philosophy of the business is more based silo than integrated, and I think I've worked in quite a few sort of companies of our ilk where we have extremes. So sometimes people buy companies and think, right, I can integrate that with that company. Unfortunately, if you buy entrepreneurs and buy talent and invest in talent, which is what we do, they hate being told, right, you have to work with that person. So our experience is actually people work with other people if they like, trust, and respect each other. So what we do is we sort of create a culture whereby collaboration is encouraged and fostered, but not mandated. And part of the way we do that is we now co-locate all our businesses in country, so that we got one office in San Francisco where people are based, one in New York. We create some nice areas where people can meet for coffee and these softer things which actually are important to people's business. But what we don't do is have a sort of head office mandate that you have to work there. And part of that is the company which works with Facebook could probably give £1 million of income to other parts of the group, but they are absolutely shit scared that if they effectively if that £1 million of revenue means that you lose a 7 million clients, and that is such a signature client for them. So I think we're making progress there, but it's softly, and definitely not a core part of our DNA. I mean, quite a few of our competitors have almost laud the fact that actually we have this one-stop shop, and so many clients work with all of our agencies. Actually, increasingly what we're finding is clients don't like to being told, right, you have to work with these 5 companies. They like to pick the best themselves. Some companies are potentially a bit lazy and want to have a one-stop shop, but most clients want to work with the best, and particularly in such a fragmented, ever-changing world, they do want the specialist rather than the generalist.
Is there time for one more?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I've got 7 minutes.
Can I ask one more?
Yes.
What's your preferred way of structuring acquisitions? Because I've seen a lot of companies in this space overpay, and then people bugger off and start a new agency in 3 or 4 years' time. How do you manage that risk on acquisition?
What we do, the first thing we do is we think we're buying talent rather than buying a company. So we spend a lot of time with the key talent, understanding what makes them tick in terms of why they want to be acquired. And generally, we have a slightly weird saying is we don't like buying companies which are for sale, because they're normally for sale for a reason in terms of management want to go off. We hate taking part in auctions. Occasionally we have to do that because that is often the way companies find us. So we spend a lot of time on the cultural piece. We then structure deals whereby typically we'll buy 100%, but we'll only pay 51% up front. And then we'll have a 5-year earn-out where effectively, that management team, is incentivized to stay there for 5 years. And actually, if the conversation starts where we say, right, it's a 5-year earn out, and they say no, I want to leave after 2, that's actually generally the end of the conversation, because we are more like a portfolio investor rather than a sort of operator. So actually retaining that talent and really understanding why that talent wants to sell is critical. And then the other thing we do is we're very transparent with all our other portfolio companies, and so typically if we're looking to buy a business, we'll insist that chief exec talks to 3 or 4 other our chief execs to understand actually the culture, and we almost have a sort of Dragon's Den style thing where if any of the other chief execs don't like the business we're looking to invest in, we don't, because they probably know as much about the business as we do. So I think we go through a fairly sort of full process of cultural DD initially, understanding why someone's selling, and then making sure that they only get maybe half the value up front, so that that's the lock-in. And we don't always get it right. I think particularly in the last sort of 3 years, I think we've done a lot of good acquisitions in the UK where we've actually really encouraged management teams to take the brakes off. And I think that's sort of, whenever we meet management, there's 2 or 3 things we sell ourselves on. One, it's still going to be your business. So it's not like WP where you'll be sat in the corner and told you've got to deliver that margin. It's still that person's business, and in effect, that's very important to entrepreneurs, that they still have that sense of reasonable autonomy. Then I think we can offer opportunities, particularly for UK businesses, to go into America, because if you've got 600 people in the States, if you've got lawyers, visa waiver programs, that's quite intimidating for people to do that. And then I think people just like the sort of culture. I think they like the fact that we are a people-first organisation, very focused on delivery, but talent matters.
So you mentioned you had 17 brands in the portfolio. Do you think there's a natural limit, or do you think that if you had 30, 40, 50 WPP scale, you can carry on? Or
yeah, it's a good question, and one which we do discuss. I think the limitation on us is talent at the group level as well as talent at the brand level. I think increasingly going forward, I mean we are rationalising. In fact, I've sort of coined a phrase in the last 3 months, sort of fixing the roof while the sun shines. So, we've had this fantastic sort of tailwind of organic growth, acquisitions, and currency, and so we are looking at, the poor performers out of that 17, and we are doing some mergers, and so that's something we will be announcing in a month's time or so, that we are rationalising the portfolio a little bit. I think increasingly going forward, what we're doing is challenging the 17 brands. Actually, how can you double over the next 3 years? And often that does involve them doing acquisitions. And the way it works is, they'll recommend it, but then head office will then execute. So I think we'll still be acquisitive, but I think it'll be often building out some of our existing brands rather than taking on 18, 19, 20, because I think that does become a bit of a management headache.
Gentleman here.
A few years back you were struggling, and now you are completely transformed. I mean, what is really the key to this?
I think I could be flippant and say I joined 3 years ago, but probably totally wrong, coincidence. I think 3 years ago we had a situation where we had great businesses in the US. We had a slightly dysfunctional relationship between the chief exec and CFO. Chief exec San Francisco, CFO London. They never really met, which was not great. In fact, it turned out that my predecessor only left the country once in the previous 18 months, which if 80% of your business is outside the UK, is probably not a great way of doing your job. And so I think what I've done is I haven't really interfered in the US, because actually, if that business was, if it's growing at 10% organic, 20% margin, I really took on the focus in terms of fixing the problem child, which was 40% of the business. And so we merged 2 of our competing businesses in APAC and EMEA, which I think has been really helpful, because previously we had 2 businesses which were competing with each other in continental Europe and APAC, which seemed a bit nonsense. So that was quite a simple thing. And then I've very practically gone through all the UK businesses, improving their performance and get them focusing on profitable growth rather than just growth. A lot of the businesses were just desperately sort of rushing after customers rather than thinking, actually, is this a good customer? Because often if you rush after a customer, you've won them in a pitch, they don't really value you, and you're 2 years away from the next repitch. So I think it's sort of focus on the basics. I think Tim and I just got a great partnership whereby he focuses on what he's brilliant at in terms of understanding technology, understanding what's happening in the US market. I think I just brought a bit of sort of rigour and focus to the UK, and I think in a way success breeds success, really.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter.